down to business. The new Carney cabinet meets for the first time. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
It's time to get to work. One day after a swearing-in ceremony at Rideau Hall, Prime Minister Carney and his new cabinet ministers are back on Parliament Hill. There's a cabinet meeting happening right now. It started a couple of hours ago. Whether Prime Minister Carney's new team is a big change from the Trudeau years depends on who you ask. Some note there are 24 new faces in this 38-member cabinet. Others say there are a lot of holdovers from Mr. Trudeau's time in office. People like Anita Anand, Dominic LeBlanc, Melanie Joly, Francois-Philippe Champagne, and Sean Fraser. Speaking outside of Rideau Hall, Prime Minister Carney said the country needs experienced cabinet ministers, especially ministers who have relationships with the top people in the Trump administration.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs will play a role, the Minister of Finance, the Minister, Monsieur Leblanc, in his role specifically designated with respect to Canada-U.S. trade, as will the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Public Safety, because there are aspects, and I will say, without going into great detail, that it was a week ago, I guess, when I met with a number of us met with President Trump and his team, and in the broader discussions outside of the Oval Office in the Roosevelt Room, we touched on all those issues: public safety, defense, as well as all aspects of economics and trade. And so it is a real team effort, and I'm remiss in that I hadn't mentioned, and I will now, obviously our ambassador in Washington, who plays a very important role.
With Prime Minister Carney promising to move ahead with an ambitious plan to build 500,000 new homes a year to bring down the cost of home ownership, one of his cabinet appointments is raising some eyebrows. Gregor Robertson, the former mayor of Vancouver, will lead on that file as Minister of Housing. But during Robertson's time as mayor, the city of Vancouver became the most unaffordable housing market in the country. Carney, of course, defended the choice.
We have a strong view on housing, a very clear policy, a policy developed with a number of members of the team, including with Mr. Robertson. And I'm thrilled that he is in the new role because he brings the type of experience that we need to tackle some aspects of this problem. One of them is is how the federal government can help get municipal costs and municipal regulation costs down and regulation out of the way so that more houses can be built. Ultimately, a housing crisis, and it is a crisis, is ultimately solved by supply. We can do things to help with affordability at the start, which is why we have the GST cut, but ultimately it's a question of supply. And as I think you know, Julie, we have very aggressive objectives on supply, the doubling of the building of supply across Canada. We're going to have to change how we build. And a lot of that expertise, it's not exclusively, but a lot of it is actually been developed in British Columbia. Minister Robertson is very familiar with it. We're going to incorporate that, but in a pan-Canadian strategy to really drive this. Thank you.
Next question.
You'll hear a lot more about it over time.
There are other curious cabinet picks that come from the real estate sector in one way or another. Surrey MP Randeep Sarai is described in one news report today as being a real estate mogul who had his license suspended in 2005, but yet was named Secretary of State for International Development. Shakfat Ali is a former realtor. He's now president of the Treasury Board, a massive job overseeing the public service, Canada's largest employer, with more than 365,000 employees. The Prime Minister shared his thoughts on what went into selecting this team, insisting this is a change from the Trudeau years.
What guided all of the decisions is several factors. One, the best possible people in the roles. We want a cabinet that reflects Canada in all its diversity and grandeur and experience. I don't want a cabinet that just looks like me. That's not a cabinet that supports. That's not a cabinet that you can delegate authorities to. So that's what we're doing. So that's the first. That you bring the cabinet together like that. The second thing is with respect to Canada-U.S. and all aspects, if we will, of the economic and international relations, looking for a combination of experience in the files and bringing new people into the cabinet. I mean, we Canadians elected us with a mandate for change. So there is a great deal of change in this cabinet by necessity. That's what Canadians voted for.
For the official opposition Conservatives, it's a case of meet the new bosses, same as the old. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who remember is not an MP anymore, was nevertheless back on Parliament Hill and said this is a cabinet filled with failed Trudeau leftovers.
He appointed Trudeau's old team and Trudeau's old advisors. Stephen Guilbeault, whose radical green agenda would shut down all future developments in our resource industry, is still the minister responsible for Quebec. Sean Fraser was the immigration minister who caused the immigration crisis, the housing minister who gave us the housing crisis, and now he's the minister responsible for addressing the Liberal crime crisis. It seems like he is the master at failing upward. Chrystia Freeland, who as finance minister hiked capital gains tax and carbon taxes and massively grew our debt to the point where we now spend $1 billion a week on interest, stays in the cabinet. Then there's Gary Anadasangari, the new Minister of Public Safety, who said the actual crimes, the actual issues around bail are quite sound, and they are embedded in, codified in law right now, as in to say that there's nothing wrong with the system. Well, in fact, there's everything wrong, as we see from the growing crime wave on our streets. Then there's François-Philippe Champagne, Trudeau's Minister of Everything, who never really managed to do anything.
But despite that glowing review, Poilievre did signal there may be opportunities for Conservatives and Liberals to get along. After today's cabinet meeting, the next stop for parliamentarians will be the election of the referee in the House of Commons. MPs will elect a Speaker of the House on the 26th of May, and then the very next day on the 27th, the focus will turn to the Senate chamber and the speech from the throne, outlining the government's priorities, and of course to be read by King Charles III. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
The cabinet's been sworn in. First cabinet meeting being held today. Later this month, Parliament's back in session amid a lot of economic uncertainty. What kind of economy is the new Prime Minister Mark Carney inheriting? Sal Guatieri is Senior Economist and Director at BMO Capital Markets. Good to hear from you.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, great to hear from you. How would you describe the Canadian economy right now?
Well, it's facing some challenges. That's for sure. I mean, we were gaining some momentum through the turn of the year, but that basically came to a pretty abrupt halt through the first quarter, obviously because of concerns about the trade war. So we've seen the housing market, for example, which was basically a steady recovery through the second half of last year, has turned downwards once again. The manufacturing sector clearly worried about the impact of this trade war. So, yeah, faces some pretty significant challenges. Now, we do think the economy continued to grow in the first quarter of the year, but I think it's more the current quarter, second and then third quarter, where we will see or likely see some pullback in exports to the U.S. Because of the tariffs. And just because of all the uncertainty, we are seeing business investment just on hold for now. And same with the housing market. People have put their home buying plans on hold as well. So that will be reflected likely in an economy that either stalls or possibly even contracts for a couple of quarters.
Okay, well, on that,
before we adjust. Yep.
What's your forecast or your odds for a recession in Canada?
We are calling for a shallow recession in Canada, a two-quarter downturn in GDP through the second and third quarters of this year. Fairly moderate. It's not your standard, or we hope not a standard recession. And one, though, that could push the unemployment rate up by about 1 percentage point. So likely to see some material job losses as well. Again, all related to the trade war. But assuming we see further signs of de-escalation and we are taking some comfort from the measures from the White House just in the past month to de-escalate and roll back some of the tariffs globally. We should see the economy then start to adjust to the new trade policy environment, begin to grow again by the fourth quarter of this year, and then pick up some steam through next year. Partly on the back of lower interest rates, because we do expect the Bank of Canada, once they see the jobless rate moving up further, will cut interest rates 3 more times by a total of 75 basis points.
So you think the unemployment rate could move above 7% nationally, Sal?
Yeah, that is our call at the moment. Now, again, we have taken some comfort from the rolling back of tariffs and just a steady de-escalation in the trade war, basically starting April 9th with the pause on reciprocal tariffs. And then we saw this weekend the U.S.-China temporary trade deal, which hopefully leads to a more permanent truce. So that's encouraging. And that does suggest some upside risk for Canada's economy, that there is a potential we will upgrade our economic outlook for this year and then next year, and the unemployment rate may not go up too much further. But so far, our base case view is that we could see the economy contract for a couple quarters and the unemployment rate go up by 1 percentage point.
The latest reading on inflation, 2.3%. What is your forecast for the inflation rate? Could inflation make a comeback?
We don't think so, no. The counter tariffs by the Canadian government on U.S. shipments to Canada are really much less than was initially planned. So that really will not push up inflation all that much. There will be some temporary lift to inflation because of the retaliatory tariffs, but not much less than feared. So that's good news. And the economy, again, we just don't believe is strong enough. And if the unemployment rate does go up, we could see wage growth moderate further, and basically businesses losing what little pricing power they have at the moment. So, no, we are not worried about inflation. We think inflation will actually average very close to the 2% target both this year and next year.
Okay. The mortgage renewal cycle for 2025, where do things stand with that right now? And how prepared are Canadians for the higher mortgage rate environment in your assessment?
Yeah, there's another situation that is much less worrisome than initially feared. Remember, a couple of years ago when mortgage rates peaked at quite high levels, many homeowners resetting their mortgage were doing so at borrowing costs that were well above the rates they qualified at several years ago. And they were not only cutting back on some discretionary purchases, but also on some necessities just to continue to pay their mortgage payments, their credit card bills. That concern is much less now. In fact, those homeowners that are resetting at current mortgage rates, which are much closer to 4% instead of 5.5% and 6% 2 years ago, are now resetting at borrowing costs that are well below the rates that they qualified at, which are generally above 5%. So, yeah, homeowners still cutting back on some discretionary spending, restaurant outings, perhaps the annual vacation, but they do not appear to be cutting back as much on necessities. So that's why we were seeing a significant pickup in Canadian consumer spending through the turn of the year. Now, because consumer confidence has headed south due to the trade war, that's a bit at risk. But again, much less worried about mortgage resets than was the case a year and a half ago.
Thank you so much for your analysis today, Sal Guatieri. Great to hear from you.
Likewise. Take care, Rob.
Senior economist and director at BMO Capital Markets. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow
Returns on News Radio.
Here with David Smith, your Wednesday edition of Now You Know with Rob Snow. And if you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, We have a great new mobile app that will help you hear our show when you want to. Listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app, spelled Seekr. It has all kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. You can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr. And now you know with Rob Snow is also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. We have one eye on this cabinet meeting that's been happening in Ottawa. Cabinet swearing in yesterday. And cabinet ministers, new and old, were cornered by members of the Parliamentary Press Gallery on the way in. One is already making waves, and that is the former mayor of Vancouver, Gregor Robertson. I mean, this was kind of, David, a bit of a head-shaking appointment anyway. Vancouver is the most expensive housing market in the world. Well, in the country, it's one of the most expensive housing markets in the world. A lot of that appreciation happened while Gregor Robertson was the mayor of Vancouver, and he has been accused of turning a blind eye to Chinese money it was being laundered into Vancouver real estate, making housing even more unaffordable for residents of Vancouver. He was cornered today by a member of the Parliamentary Press Gallery and asked if housing prices need to come down. Do housing prices need to come down? And he said no. He said no. Housing prices don't need to come down, Minister? Okay. Let's listen to this.
Do you think prices need to go down? No, I think that we need to deliver more supply, make sure the market is stable. It's a huge part of our economy. We need to be delivering more affordable housing. The government of Canada has not been building affordable housing since the 90s, and we've created a huge shortage across Canada. That's where the big need is right now, and I'm very encouraged that the Prime Minister and our commitment right now in government is the double construction and focus on the affordable side.
Okay. That's a curious answer. I mean, I suppose I can understand it. You know, if you're an older Canadian who has owned your home for a long time and you're sitting on a lot of equity, for example, you know, maybe the last thing you want is the value of your home to go down. But what if you're a younger person? What if you're a young millennial or a member of Gen Z? You most certainly want lower housing prices. And the housing minister is asked straight up, do you think housing prices should come down? Maybe you could just isolate that. David, do you want housing prices to come down? And what's his answer?
Do you think prices need to go down? No, I think that we need to deliver more supply.
No, we need more supply. You would think more supply would make housing prices come down. I don't know. It's a curious response from the new housing minister, who was, well, in certain circles, kind of a questionable pick to begin with. One of the things that we will talk about during our Newsday panel, which is coming up right after the latest breaking news on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio. The Newsday panel.
Yes, it is time for our Newsday panel. Ashton Arsenault is back, partner at Crestview Strategies. Welcome back, Ashton. Good to hear from you.
Thanks, Rob. How you doing?
And I'm good. Nick McRoberts is back with us as well from Hill and Knowlton. Hello to you as well, Nick McRoberts.
Hi, Rob. How's it going?
Good to hear from you again. Well, Nick, I mean, you were here with us when we were previewing and speculating about who might go where for Mark Carney's cabinet. As the former Liberal staffer on Parliament Hill, we would like to have your take on what you think of it all. What do you think of where everyone went?
Yeah, I think, it reflects, the cabinet reflects the situation that we're facing right now with some deep economic uncertainty in Canada. And it also reflects the reality that, cabinet needs to be reflective of new members that were elected, strong candidates, regional balances as well. Nothing is perfect, and there's definitely some criticisms floating around. But the focus on this should be that Mark Carney has surrounded himself with people that he clearly believes can help him in making decisions. And it's clear from his style that he's treating this as some type of almost a government run like a business, and he's going to do that with him calling the shots. And this cabinet is what will enable him to do that.
What do you think of Prime Minister Carney's new cabinet, Ashton?
Yeah, so if I was to approach it honestly, I would say there's obviously a lot of giant changes. And if you think about it critically, you could also say that the more things change, the more they stay the same. So you have your stalwarts, Ministers Anand, Jolie remain, although they swap roles. Of course, you've got Minister LeBlanc, Minister Champagne, Minister Fraser, Minister Haidu, all ministers who were instrumental in the Trudeau years. That's hardly a change. A couple of positive notes mixed in with a few glaring omissions and a few peculiar choices. I mean, you've got 3 ministers from Brampton, none from Calgary. We've got full-blown rookies, the stronger on paper, of course, being Minister Tim Hodgson, Minister Gregor Robertson, although he's having a bad day online. Look, I think, frankly, the decision to move forward with gender parity might have limited their choices in a few areas, which totally fine. Get why they did what they did. And importantly, and this is where I give a thumbs up, for those in the West in particular, they made changes at Environment and Natural Resources, which I think was absolutely mission critical. So for me, bit of a mixed bag. Let's give them a chance.
What signals, in your opinion, Nick, that this really is a change from the Trudeau years?
I think, well, Trudeau's not there. Justin Trudeau's not there. This is not a government of Justin Trudeau. This is a government of Mark Carney. And yes, I will admit that some of the same players are there. I'm not going to be partisan about that, and we can have a conversation about that. But it's a new government with different priorities, with a different approach to governing, with a different approach to how they're going to tackle the issues in front of us. Right? Carney has proven that with already scrapping the consumer price on carbon. There's still more work to be done. He mentioned yesterday that he's willing to, entertain the idea of a pipeline and get pipelines built, but that's not the only part. There are signals here that this is different than Trudeau, and to say that it's just the same, omits some really obvious changes to the style and priorities of this new government.
Okay. Ashton, you said, there were some curious picks, some glaring omissions, in your words, but what picks came as a surprise to you when you heard them? You're like, oh, wasn't expecting that. What would be some?
Yeah, I mean, Lena Diab, I don't think anybody had her on the bingo card. Shafkat Ali, the fact that they left out Carlos Lateo, former Quebec finance minister. I thought Corey Hogan from Calgary was like a dead shoe-in. Very, 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 very surprised that he didn't make the cut. And in the spirit of what Nick's saying, I'm not going to be overly partisan about it either. Like, if you want to go and compare even how it's currently presenting publicly, I mean, even the most ardent Trudeau defenders would say that they relied heavily on sort of vibes and comms, right? As of today, the Carney government is certainly not relying on comms and vibes. They are presenting forward very analytically. And look, I'll give them some credit in how they've restructured some of the departments. For example, merging together finance and national revenue. Very smart. Should have been done a long time ago. So, there is a foundation to build on here. It's day 2 for the cabinet, day 1.5 even. And so sure. I think we have to give them a bit of a shot, but sure. It's very fair to ask questions at the same time.
What surprised you? What surprised you, Nick?
I think the blurring of lines between portfolios is a little surprising when you look at it just holistically. So I look at Dominic LeBlanc and Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia Freeland taking internal trade, and Dominic LeBlanc having one Canadian economy in his
and intergovernmental affairs. And intergovernmental
affairs. So, to me, that's quite an overt way of saying we have these portfolios covered off by two people if one of you steps out of line. That's kind of how I view that, and it's surprising that it's so out there. On a specific note, as excited as I am to have, an agriculture minister from PEI and Heath MacDonald, who I think will do a great job. Here. Indeed.
The Islanders like that news. Okay. Yeah.
I think it is surprising to the sector more broadly that Cody Boyce is not just not at agriculture, but he's not
out
there entirely. And there's questions there around regional representation. For the most part, I think Gregor Robertson at housing, Timothy Hodgson at natural resources, those are all very consistent appointments that I think make sense. We could nitpick others. I might not have put some people in cabinet that remained, but overall, this is Mark Carney's prerogative to make. This is his cabinet, and it's going to be as effective as he wants it to be.
Okay, we'll be right back with some more cabinet talk here on our Newsday panel. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel, post-cabinet edition with Ashton Arsenault, partner at Crestview Strategies, and from Hill & Knowlton, Nick McRoberts. So let's talk about a couple of cabinet appointees that are making news today and lighting up social media right now. The new housing minister is going to be the former mayor of Vancouver, Gregor Robertson. Not a splendid record on housing affordability during his time as a mayor of Vancouver. Jacked up development charges, ignored the foreign buyers problem and outright money laundering that was happening in Vancouver. And in the end, Vancouver became Canada's most expensive housing market and one of the most expensive housing markets in the world. He was asked today, do housing prices need to come down? And he actually said no. He said, no, housing prices don't need to come down. The market needs to be stable. We have the audio. Let's play it again.
You think prices need to go down? No, I think that we need to deliver more supply, make sure the market is stable. It's a huge part of our economy. We need to be delivering more affordable housing. The government of Canada has not been building affordable housing since the 90s, and we've created a huge shortage across Canada. That's where the big need is right now, and I'm very encouraged that the Prime Minister and our commitment right now in government is the double construction and focus on the affordable side.
Focus on the affordable side. Okay. I would challenge Gregor Robertson to find me anyone under the age of 40 in Canada who doesn't think housing prices need to come down. And he's now the Minister of Housing, and he doesn't think housing prices need to come down. Do you think he misspoke, or do you think he believes what he says? And generally, what do you think of the appointment? Ashton, Gregor Robertson as your housing minister now.
So there's a lot of negatives to pick up on from his record as mayor in Vancouver, and it's one of those appointments that I would call very on the nose. So while his experience on paper, you could argue, federal housing minister kind of makes sense. Unfortunately, when you dive into the details, you start to realize fairly quickly, maybe they could have went another direction. If records are to stand on their own two legs, his record's a little shaky. Again, day 1.5 of this cabinet. I assume he'll find a more stable footing coming out of today, because I assume he'll get a phone call about that performance and what not to do the next time he's approached by journalists. It's going to take some time. There's going to be some growing pains. I'm very interested, for example, to see what, in particular, his mandate letter might say. We should know what's going to be in there in the next couple of weeks. But, I mean, for him to just immediately say that housing prices don't have to come down in Canada, you've pissed off everybody that isn't 40 years old and owns a $2 million home.
Yeah. What do you think, Nick?
Look, it's hard for me to play sit here and play armchair quarterback, but if I'm going to, I would not be putting my newly elected MPs and cabinet ministers in a scrum before their first cabinet meeting. I think that's the first mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
All right.
Bad strategy.
Okay.
To Minister Robertson's point, however, we can't have housing prices crash because that will cause more economic unrest in this country. So I understand what he's trying to get at by saying we need to get at the root causes of supply. But don't start any answer with no or yes. Like point number one. On his appointment, like I think I agree with Ashton here, and it's kind of shades of Mark Garneau, the astronaut, as transport minister, right? Like it is quite on the nose. And, Gregor Robertson will have the municipal connections, the understanding of how to work between provinces and the federal government and municipalities, housing supply build, all of that, sure. But it hangs out there, the idea of like, okay, well, you've jacked housing prices, and what have you ever done to make sure housing prices come down? I think it's as valuable an appointment as anyone in cabinet. I think he's as qualified as anyone to have gone in there. But real not good slip up day one.
Okay, we'll stop here. Stop a little bit early because I really want to get into these comments today. Given the backdrop being what's coming from Alberta, what we're hearing from Saskatchewan about how the West wants respect. They stick a microphone into the face of Stephen Guilbeault today. Where are you on pipelines right now? And it's like the same old Stephen Guilbeault. I want to talk about this. Should Stephen Guilbeault be speaking at all about pipelines, or should he be deferring and saying, well, that's not my portfolio anymore? Go ask the Minister of the Environment. When we come back, I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Here with Ashton Arsenault and Nick McRoberts, our Newsday panelists, today talking about the cabinet. Stephen Guilbeault is still there. He is still there. Stephen Guilbeault is in the cabinet. He is not the Minister of the Environment anymore. His portfolio will now be known as the Ministry of Canadian Identity and Culture. Canadian Identity and Culture. Who do I identify with? Oh, Steve Guilbeault. It pops right to mind. We scaled the CN Tower together. The minister responsible for official languages. Okay, all well and good. Members of the press gallery still seek him out because of his environmental protester street cred. And he was asked today about the momentum behind pipelines, and Mr. Carney signaling that he may be open to something like an east-west pipeline. And this is what Mr. Guilbeault said.
So on pipelines, people should remember that we bought a pipeline, Trans Mountain, and that is only used right now about 40% capacity. So I think before we start talking about building an entire new pipeline, maybe we should maximize the use of existing infrastructure. And the Canadian Energy Regulator, as well as the International Energy Agency, are telling us that probably by 2028, 2029, demand for oil will peak globally, and it will also peak in Canada. So as far as I know, there are no investors right now. There are no companies that are saying that they want to build an east-west pipeline. And as you know, these things are built by companies, not governments.
Okay. Should Mr. Guilbeault be speaking about this at all? You said I'd love to know what happens when they go into these meetings. I mean, I wonder if Mark Carney just kind of glares at him and says, "Can you please shut your mouth about pipelines, Mr. Guilbeault? Just defer to your colleague or something." What do you think about what you're hearing from Mr. Guilbeault here on pipelines right now? Ashton, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so the reason why businesses don't want to invest and build pipelines in Canada at the moment is because the outgoing government made it so impossible to actually see a project across the finish line that it has become a horrible investment. So it's a chicken and egg argument. Look, there is honestly a strong case to be made that Minister Guilbeault is perhaps the worst and most divisive environment minister Canada has ever had. And the guy must walk around Quebec in golden shoes, because otherwise he probably should have been relegated to the backbench, particularly when you consider some of the electeds from Quebec under the Liberal banner that got the snub. So, I mean, if I am Minister Hodgson, brand new in my role as Minister of Natural Resources and Energy, another sort of smash up that I actually like, so I'll give credit to them on that.
Yeah.
I would be walking over to Minister Guilbeault and say very politely, if you do that again, we're going to have big time beef, my friend.
Right. That's my file, not yours. Yeah.
He is literally persona non grata everywhere west of Quebec, and maybe even east of Quebec, now that you mention it.
Oh, yes. What do you think, Nick, on what you're hearing there?
I think there's two ministers in this cabinet that have to have very clear direction on what they're not allowed to talk about. Chrystia Freeland needs to be told that she's not allowed to talk about Donald Trump.
Okay.
And Stephen Guilbeault needs to be told that he's not allowed to talk about pipelines. I will fully agree on both of those as a resident Liberal. If we're going to move on from this notion that it's Trudeau's government and all of this stuff, it needs to be that Trudeau's ministers, the ones who were in cabinet with him, need to stop talking about portfolios that they had in a past cabinet.
Okay.
That being said, in defense of Stephen Guilbeault, I think tying in the idea of energy resources to Canadian identity is a good communications tactic, and the idea that Canada's identity as a global superpower and as a resource providing nation being part of this national sense of our economic power in the world is good.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you want Stephen Guilbeault being the person talking?
You don't want him to be
you don't
want him to be the messenger of that.
Yeah, that's a great message for the Prime Minister to say, but not Stephen Guilbeault.
Okay. Hey, great points all around. Thank you so much. We'll speak soon.
Thanks, Rob. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Thanks,
bye-bye.
guys. Have a good one.
That's Ashton Arsenault. He's a partner at Crestview Strategies, and Nick McRoberts from Hill and Knowlton. That's our Newsday panel. Coming up, it's Talkback right after the news. Midweek edition of Talkback. EVs will be our focus. Weigh in on that topic right after the news. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. The latest breaking news is next on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today's topic, EVs, electric vehicles, and the plan for Canada. Under the previous Trudeau government, along with a number of provincial governments, most notably the Ontario government, there was a massive plan to build an electric vehicle manufacturing sector in Canada. And it included large investments by many companies, but also tens of billions of dollars in incentives and subsidies from both the federal and provincial governments. But there are questions and there are concerns about these investments and whether they will ultimately bear fruit. Given that there is now a new federal government in place, a new Liberal government led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, we want to know what you think should happen to this plan. What should happen to this plan to try and build an EV manufacturing sector in Canada? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Should the government stick with this plan? Should it reverse course? What do you think? Because there's a lot of money at stake here, a lot of public money, a lot of taxpayers' dollars on the line, your money. A report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer released about a year ago. Parliamentary Budget Officer's name is Yves Giroux, And he estimated that the total government support for these projects is more than $50 billion. $50 billion. $52.5 billion to be precise. 60% of that would come from the federal government, roughly $31 billion, and the balance from provincial governments, totaling roughly $21 billion. But the news headlines of late, well, they seem to suggest an EV industry that has hit a rough patch, and the future of some of these projects are in doubt. It was learned yesterday that Honda, for example, is postponing its plans to build new EV factories in Ontario. That plan is now on hold for at least the next 2 years, with Honda saying that's because of slowing growth in the EV market in North America. Now, when that project was first announced, Honda said it would invest $15 billion of its own money to build 4 new factories. And the federal government and the Ontario government, they came to the table and they said, here's $2.5 billion from each of us, $5 billion in total. But now the future of that project kind of up in the air, at least a 2-year delay, according to Honda. In Quebec, it would already appear that some taxpayer money has already gone up in smoke. A company from Sweden called Northvolt had planned to build an EV battery plant in the South Shore of Montreal, but that company, Northvolt, has gone bust. It's insolvent. The federal government offered that company $4 billion in incentives. The Quebec government was in for almost $3 billion. The best guess right now is that the taxpayers have already lost about $270 million in so-called sunk costs. In Ingersoll, Ontario, where General Motors has a factory, they were assembling what's known as the Bright Drop Zevo, which is a small electric-powered delivery van. But that plant is now shut down. It will not reopen until the fall, and when it reopens, it will reopen at half capacity. Demand for those EV delivery vans, well, it's been sluggish. Fewer than 500 have been sold in Canada so far. Some of the projects seem to be moving forward as planned. There's the VW project in St. Thomas, Ontario. VW putting in $7 billion. Total government subsidies could top $16 billion. $16 billion. When the plant opens, which is supposed to be sometime in the year 2027, it could employ as many as 3,000 people. In Windsor, Ontario, Stellantis is building a battery plant for electric vehicles with the help of $15 billion in tax breaks. It is supposed to be fully operational next year and employ about 2,500 people. So look, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of private money from these companies, but also a lot of government money, which is your money. And this was really the grand industrial strategy from Justin Trudeau and premiers like Doug Ford. Now, Doug Ford's still the premier of Ontario, but Justin Trudeau is gone, and there's a new prime minister, Mark Carney. What should his government do? Stick with projects like these massive investments in the EV space? What would you say? Yeah, there are good paying jobs. Electric is the future of the auto industry. If we want to have an auto industry in this country at all, these are the kinds of investments we should be making. Is that what you would say? Or would you say no? It's too much money. It's too risky. The future of EVs may be overhyped. And this is money that would be better spent elsewhere on other priorities. Please have your say on this topic. It is your money that's on the line after all. Our phone lines are open right now. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that to us, and we will make your call a priority. Should the government stick with its EV strategy or put that EV strategy in reverse? Midweek edition of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio. Let's get to our phone lines. Mo is up first today, calling from Airdrie. Hello, Mo. You're on the air. What's your opinion? I'm good. Thank you, Mo.
I'll tell you what my opinion is. Maybe maybe we work on making some money first and then spend it second. And let's look at the thing that Toyota's dealing with right now, where they're moving away from battery and going towards hydrogen. And with the Toyota-Honda merger possibly happening in the future, I don't see anything happening with Honda and batteries in Canada. Plus, batteries are really, really, really bad for the environment, and nobody's really taking that in consideration. I wish they would, and I wish we'd make some money before we start spending it.
Okay. So ditch it, you would say.
Hey?
Ditch it. You would say ditch this plan.
Oh, gone. Out of here. Forget about it. And ditch half the cabinet. We don't need to spend that kind of money.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. That's a topic for another day, Mo. The size of the cabinet, 38 of them. We can talk about that some other time. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Zool in Calgary. Hello, Zool.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Beautiful, beautiful show.
That's good.
Love that you keep me engaged while I'm driving in the...
Well, thank you so much. Are you driving an electric vehicle?
Construction-infested Calgary. No, not at all. not at all. No.
Okay.
I honestly believe the money should be spent in, like Mo said, making some money. Get some infrastructure built to get our natural resources out of the ground and selling them to the world. Let's get our economy going and then worry about everything else.
Okay, but they're saying this is the future of the auto industry. And if we want to manufacture vehicles in this country, this is the way the industry is moving. It's moving toward electric, right? And the internal combustion engine and the vehicle that you're driving around, that's going to be like the dodo bird. It's going extinct. This is the future. And if we want to be part of this future industry, this is what we have to do.
But all the indications, all the big companies are scaling back their EV production because it's not working out. It's not selling as much as they thought they would be selling. So I think, maybe in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we can visit it again in 10 years. But at the moment, we are in dire straits where we need revenue, where we need immediate revenue. And the only way to do that is get our natural resources out to the world and not just to the United States.
Fair enough. Thank you, Zul, for calling. Yep, good for you. Hope you can navigate the construction out there. It's that season, after all, in cities all across the country. We're talking about EVs. That's our topic of the day. Canada's strategy to build a manufacturing base for EVs in this country. Chris is up next in Halifax. Hello, Chris.
I'm 100% agreement with your first two callers.
Okay.
No government money, no taxpayer money put into these programs, these businesses.
Okay.
If a business is viable, private industry will do it. If it's not viable, they look to government. And I don't want my tax dollars put into it. Government's job is to provide social services, not to pay or to play business investor. And let's face it, Rob, over the years, government does not have a good track record at picking winners, do they?
No, not really. No, not really. But I guess you could make the case, look, if we don't put this money to build, say, this factory, wherever it goes, Quebec, Ontario, they're not going to Halifax. They're going to either Quebec or Ontario. Right. If we don't do that, somebody from Alabama, the governor of Alabama, along with the Trump administration, they'd love to have a shiny new EV factory or an auto factory of any kind, or in Michigan or Ohio, and they'll give them all kinds of tax breaks and incentives to build that factory there.
Let them do it.
Oh, let them do it. Okay.
Let them do it. If they want to do it, do it. If the government wants to invest in business, invest in our resource sources here. We've got the resources here. Nobody has to make a business case for natural gas or oil or gold or our critical minerals or anything like that. The business case is already made for that. Don't stick your neck out on these EVs. Let the other jurisdictions do that. Concentrate on what we know we've got and what we can do right.
Okay, I think Premier Ford, if he was here, not to put words in his mouth, but I think he would say, well, that's what we're it's not just about the, batteries. for electric vehicles. It's about the steel that goes into the vehicle, and maybe we make that at an Ontario steel mill. It's about the nickel that we will mine in Northern Ontario, and it's about the critical minerals that will come from the Ring of Fire, and it's a lot more than just the batteries.
Where do most of those things that we export go now? They go to the States and other parts of the world. They don't stay here in Canada.
Okay.
So if Alabama or Michigan or Tennessee or whatever has one of these plants, they'll buy critical minerals and aluminum and stuff from us.
Right. Okay. Yeah, very good point. Interesting. Thank you, Chris. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. What should be the future for this industry in this country? Should we be putting so much public money at risk to try and build a manufacturing base for the EV industry here in Canada? Ken in Cochrane up next. Hello, Ken.
Hey, Rob. So
hi, Ken.
The whole issue about EVs and Honda now saying that it wants to take a 2-year pause is sort of in concert with what's been happening in the U.S. Ford announced the same thing in the U.S. Audi and BMW, VW, all in Europe had similar announcements. Why is Canada continuing down this path when other economies, such as our biggest trading partner still, the U.S., is saying drill, baby, drill, and we're watching the parade go by. I'm with your other callers there saying the focus ought to be on getting those pipelines done and selling our natural gas, selling our other resources that are in the ground, not just oil and gas, but the Ring of Fire, capital on that. Getting to world markets, while there is a world market for this type of commodity, and capitalizing on it, and then building out, things like EVs. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, but I don't think we should be putting all of our eggs in one basket in the EV market. And if we
would you say then, Ken, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, would you say when it comes to the industrial strategy of the country, our natural resources like oil, gas, whatever, should have priority over an industry like this? Is that what you're saying?
It's got to at the present time.
It has to. Okay.
It's if we're saying that the future is EVs, then we've got a limited time to be able to capitalize and exploit our natural resources. And it's not even a done deal that electrics are going to be the way of the future. Somebody else mentioned hydrogen, and they are selling hydrogen electric hybrids in the U.S. in California, I believe. Honda's doing that, and I believe Toyota's doing that as well. I don't think we're going electric, so we better tread lightly.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Interesting points. Thank you. Yeah, to Halifax. Great to get a call from Halifax today. AJ up next. Hi, AJ.
Yes, how you doing?
I'm good. What do you think, AJ, on this topic?
I look at the electric car as I don't think it's a con, but I think the Canadian government and a lot of newscasts have told us that Canada has to save the world by going electric. And if you took every car out of Canada right now, it wouldn't even move the needle to saving the world. So I think we're throwing money against the wind here. I think other people should do the buying and of the batteries and spending the money. Let the states, they got all kinds of money, make the EV plants and stuff and sell us the electric cars. Or why don't we buy Chinese electric cars for $21,000 brand new? I think
that's an interesting. That's an interesting. We have 100% tariff on made in China electric vehicles.
Yeah, I know. That's why we can't buy them, of course. But I understand that doing that would destroy a lot of industry in Canada. But for the government to tell me that I make a dent in that line of saving the world, it doesn't make sense spending billions of dollars and chasing the wind. It doesn't make sense to me anyway. So.
Okay, well, it is a lot of money. And coming up right after the news, I'll outline just how much money it is, what goes into that $52.5 billion figure for those 13. That's it. That's all. 13 EV-related projects, all broken down by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. You can have your say on our topic of the day.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been discussing Canada's strategy to build a manufacturing base for electric vehicles here at home. Tens of billions of dollars in public money on the line. What should the new government do? What's your opinion on this? 1-833-668-2577. Some questions about the viability of these projects going forward. Michael in Waterloo up next. Hi, Michael.
Hi. Yeah, great to hear from you.
Yeah, great to hear from you.
I just wanted to talk about not necessarily the EV factory, but just the technology that goes into the vehicles itself.
Sure.
I've been seeing a lot of advancements in battery technology and storage and a whole bunch of other stuff that goes over my head, but that's involved in making these cars like better and better every year.
Yes.
And I just wonder if manufacturing facilities would be able to keep up and how that trickles down to the consumer, where you don't know if like in 2 years your value is going to be slashed. Also, just in regards to a caller earlier, in regards to the cheap Chinese EVs,
yes.
The reason they're cheap is because they're being heavily subsidized by their government. And actually, there's all around China, they're having a huge issue with vehicle fires. And EV fires are way harder to put out than gasoline fires. So I'd be curious if anyone from the fire department would weigh in to see how they feel about having like way more electric vehicles on the road.
Yeah, there have been concerns expressed about that, but one of your main concerns is the advancements in the technology. Okay, what about these batteries that are being built by Volkswagen or Stellantis, or that were supposed to be built by Northvolt? What if they're not the hot commodity today? What if there's some incredible advancement in technology? You may be too old to remember, but what if we're investing in beta when VHS is going to be the thing, you know?
Exactly.
Or what if we're investing in BlackBerry if the future is the iPhone, something like that, right?
Yeah.
That would be a concern for you. I think it's a great point that you make. You know, are we making the right bets on the right technology, right?
How are they able to show that they can transition with, like, if a new change comes?
If a change comes,
going to be stuck.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. 3 lines available there. It is a lot of public money, as I mentioned. I mean, it's so much money, taxpayer dollars on the line, that the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Yves Giroux, is like the financial watchdog on Parliament Hill. I mean, he doesn't have an agenda. He's just a numbers guy. He decided to dig into these numbers, released a report about a year ago about all the promises that governments have made to these companies. And I remember reading that report for the first time and having to pick my jaw up off the floor. It's eye-watering. The amount of money that governments, plural, federal and provincial, have committed to these projects. 13 projects were announced between 2020 and 2024. The total amount of government commitments to these projects, $52.5 billion. I know. Can you even wrap your head around it? It's so much money. $52.5 billion for 13 EV-related projects. You put that into some kind of perspective. The entire automotive industry in Canada contributes about $18 billion a year to the GDP of the country. So you get the automobile industry in Canada is worth about $18 billion with 13 projects, $52 billion. And the PBO has a list. I have it right here in front of me. All the projects and how much governments have committed to make these happen. Honda, now on hold for 2 years, $5 billion. Northvolt, which has gone bust, $8.2 billion was committed to that place in Montreal. $8.2 billion. Stellantis and Volkswagen are the two really big ones. Stellantis, $18.6 billion. Volkswagen, $16.6 billion. Ford EcoPro, $644 million, which, sounds like chump change. $644 million. I mean, if you probably build a hospital for that in a small size city, $644 million. GM POSCO, $296 million. This one caught my eye. Umicore, $976 million investment from the government, from you and me, to create 600 jobs. $976 million to create 600 jobs in Eastern Ontario for a battery plant in a place called Loyalist Township. Like, that's $1.6 million a job. I mean, this has to be one of the most expensive job creation programs ever if you're $1.6 million a job. Volta Energy Solutions Canada, $220 million. Lion Electric. Lion Electric is in receivership right now. $100 million. This was a Quebec company, Saint-Jérôme, Quebec. It was going to make electric-powered school buses. Electric-powered school buses. It's bust. And the province of Quebec says it's on the hook for $140 million on that fiasco. Nova Bus, $30 million. There's one on in this chart. It just says Ford. No other explanation. It just says Ford, $590 million. GM Ingersoll, $1 billion for a plant that is shut down right now and won't reopen until the fall. 1,800 people laid off. And Stellantis, another $1 billion. It all just rolls off the tongue. And when you add it all up, it comes to $52,455 million in total government support. And it's all your money. It is all your money. Surely you have something to say about it. The wisdom of this strategy. 1-833-668-2577. More of your calls just ahead on Talkback. Brian in Calgary is up next. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Brian. Go ahead. What's your opinion?
How are you?
I'm great. Well, thanks.
That's good. I enjoy your show, too, by the way.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I work for the wires company here in Calgary for over 20 years. So they're the ones that supply the electricity to the residences and commercial properties here in Calgary. Probably the biggest customer would be the Calgary airport. But I don't work there anymore, but I still have a bunch of friends that are still working for them. And about a year ago, I was having a conversation with one of the managers there, who is a good friend of mine. And he was saying, this is a year ago, if half the vehicles in Calgary went to be electric vehicles, the infrastructure of that company could not handle it, and they would have to invest billions of dollars to invest in the wires, transformers, change the substations around. So, and the only people that are going to pay for that is, instead of us paying, like, say, 8 cents a kilowatt hour, well, all of a sudden it goes to the customers paying 15 to 20 cents a kilowatt hour.
Right, sure.
The billions of, they don't talk about the infrastructure that needs to be for these vehicles to go into place. Like, it's huge amounts of money.
Yeah, and you need to be able to generate the electricity as well, not just transmit the electricity, which sounds like the side of the business that you've spent your career in, the transmission side of the electricity. How many more nuclear power plants will we need, or hydroelectricity facilities will we need, or what have you? Right?
Actually, that's another thing here in Alberta. We can't. We went from having coal to being natural gas generated electricity.
That's right. Yeah.
Cut down our carbon emissions, which is great.
Yes.
But then I think the federal government, I'm not a liberal.
That's okay. That's okay. You're not alone on this show in that feeling.
Yeah, I know. But another thing, out here in Alberta, we don't have the rivers and the capability like James Bay and stuff to produce hydropower. We don't have those sides of rivers here.
Yes.
There's no way for us to produce that power that we need by water. We have to have something else. So the only thing that we have is we produce now, most of our electricity is produced by natural gas, which is the cleanest burning fossil fuel there is. So The only other
well, that's
way
why
we
your
could go out
premier.
here-
That's why your premier Smith is pushing back so hard on these clean electricity
It is
regulations.
because
right?
we got no other way to. The only other option for us, which is very safe nowadays, to me, anyways, is nuclear.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And I believe
Alberta
Alberta
no other
wants
way.
to. Sorry for interrupting again.
No
that's why
worries.
the government of Alberta wants to get into what they're doing in Ontario. They want to get into the small modular reactor side of the nuclear business. They think,
and that makes sense for us out here. Like, how else are we going to do it? We have two options: natural gas, or we have nuclear.
Yeah, it's a great point you make. Where are we going to get all the electricity? That's such a good point that you make. Okay, very good, Brian. Thank you. Thanks,
Rob.
To Kitchener, Mike is up next in Kitchener. Hello, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Living the dream every day.
Living the dream. I love to hear it. Yeah, that's good.
Got a comment on this though too. It's not even just for the EV market, but like Brian mentioned there too about the infrastructure. Why isn't the government not spending money to actually upgrade our electric infrastructure? Period. Forgetting about the EVs, but actually bumping that up, because a lot of neighborhoods around here, Kitchener and Waterloo, a lot of the wires are still suspended above ground, not underground. So they get taken out by a lightning storm, tree falling down, everything else. So if you have a block required on EV cars, once when a storm hits, lines go down. Now your cars can't be filled. So I think the infrastructure is what they need to focus on first versus the EV market itself. Secondly, you look at something like CB Rail, Kansas City. They're train engines. They're actual locomotives. They have a number of them that are actually fully hydrogen-based. So not electric, but hydrogen, because the torque has the pulling power, and they can't get that from electric. So I think long term, that's the way it should go, is the hydrogen, not the electric part, because there's nothing to dispose of at the end of it for hydrogen. It's just water and just an open tank. There's no batteries to replace. There's no batteries to put in the landfill. And it has a better option. But I think the money itself that we're spending on all these plants is better spent on actually improving the infrastructure, because overall, we still need electric power, even barring the EV market, even for everything.
Yes.
You have just for
Yes. They want to electrify everything, of course. They want everything electrified, right? Yeah.
Well, everybody wants, they want to build homes, and you have to put electrical into all these new areas. You're building homes.
And they want all those homes to have heat pumps and stuff. So,
heat pumps and a geothermal and all that stuff. So you got to get that stuff in there. So I think that's the better place than to be putting the money in.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, you're the second caller to bring that up. The infrastructure, the electricity infrastructure. Thank you for having your say in Kitchener today, Mike. We'll stop here. Keith in Calgary. Hello, Keith. You're on the air, Keith.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, hi, Keith. Good to hear from you today.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for taking the call. The short answer to the question as it's posed is absolutely categorically no.
Okay.
There's a huge number of reasons, not the least of which being, who do we sell this stuff to once we start making it? It's an economy of scale issue. We simply can't support the industry in our country, and without having any clue of what's going to go forward with tariffs and such, who are we going to sell it to? Where's the money going to come back from? It simply isn't. So the only way to subsidize it is to, punish the taxpayer even more, and the people that are hurt most by it are the ones that are least likely to even be able to afford to take part in purchasing it. So it's just a bad idea all around for the government to be in the business of anything but running the government. And this is where it becomes a big problem, is because the government just thinks it's a blank check, and they don't care. Look at the one outfit you were talking about earlier, a couple $1 billion for, a feel-good project doing school buses that went, belly up quicker than quick,
Lion Electric.
It's just not a good idea to start with. Then comes in the whole problem of the EV itself, where the aggregate benefits are arguable, if not negligible. I mean, there's certainly argument to be made to say that they're not that much better than what we have to start with. And I think it was Toyota did a comparison between regular cars, hybrids and electric vehicles and found that the hybrids were by orders of magnitude better than both. So is it the way to go? Well,
right.
you know,
and seemingly are the consumer preference, the hybrids. You know, people are still skeptical of moving to 100% electric, but they'll entertain a hybrid from a sales point of view.
Skepticism, though, it's, you know, the aggregate environmental impact, right?
Sure.
And I think it was, like I said, I think it was Toyota compared the hybrid to the battery to the gas, and found that the hybrid was something like 6 or 10 times better than either one.
Okay.
So it's not just a matter of preference, but you know, the ultimate end take of it is I'm on the page of, you know, it's a stopgap. It is the Betamax. It is the CD. Like, there is something better than what we have. We just haven't figured it out yet. And as soon as it comes, it's going to turn the EV into a dinosaur, like, instantaneously. So we'll have all this infrastructure, you know, building archaic stuff that nobody wants. You know, further to that, what's the benefit of duplicating it? Why not make a better deal with China and have their stuff that's, you know, quality built and mass produced and already affordable and already built? Like, how is it better to have two factories making the same thing? It just makes no sense.
Yeah, and there's a case to be made that, and we'll let you go there. There's a bit of a delay on your phone. There is a case to be made that we're not going to be able to compete in this industry in Canada. That the EV war has been launched and it's over, and China won, and they have a huge first mover advantage in that country. They're already selling out of China, the big Chinese companies, BYD and the like, they're selling almost 12 million vehicles, electric vehicles, a year all over the world. Not in this country, because we followed the lead of the Biden administration and put a 100% tariff on made-in-China electric cars. If the goal is to get everyone driving electric cars under the belief that it is better for the planet, maybe we should revisit that 100% tariff. That's another option, because those tariffs on those vehicles are also creating harm in other sectors of our economy, like tariffs, retaliatory tariffs on canola in the West and seafood in Atlantic Canada. It's another angle to the story.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We've been talking about Canada's EV strategy, trying to build a manufacturing base for electric vehicles in Canada. A strategy that includes tens of billions of dollars in public money, incentives, other subsidies. We're asking, should the new government stick with this plan? Or should it reverse course on some of these projects, given the uncertainty in the EV industry? More uncertainty this week with the Honda news. It's not unusual with big projects that you see cost sharing. The feds will put money in, provincial governments will put its own money in. And, you know, the politicians, they love to go to the big announcement. And the CEO thanks the government for being so visionary and generous. And then they come back for the sod turning. And then they'll be back for the ribbon cutting if the factory ever does open. But we learned yesterday that at least one of these big projects, Honda, which was going to build 4 factories in Ontario, it has now announced that's all on hold for the next 2 years because of a slowdown in the EV market in North America. That's what it's blaming it on. Now, I remember that announcement. It was in Alliston, home of Honda in Canada. Doug Ford was there. Chrystia Freeland was there. Francois-Philippe Champagne was there. Justin Trudeau was there. The CEO of Honda Canada was there. And it was smiles all around, until a news reporter had the gall to ask Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford just how many jobs are created and how much is the government spending to create those jobs. Let's remind you about what that sounded like.
What price do you put on that? There is no price you can put on that because we're investing into the people. The money is staying here in Ontario. It's not going overseas. It's not going down to the U.S. It's staying right here in Ontario for decades and generations to come.
So just to be clear, no one's willing to answer the question specifically. How many jobs are being created, and what is the cost for the government deal?
If you're not going to listen to the answer of it saying 1,000 jobs created, then there's nothing we can do for you.
Well, $5 billion was the dollar figure that was announced on that day in government incentives for the Honda deal. And now we know everything to do with that plan is up in the air. $5 billion worth of your money on the line to create 1,000 jobs. $5 billion to create 1,000 jobs. What does that work out? $5 billion, $5 million a job? $5 million. Look, these are the big dreams of people like Doug Ford and the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But there's a new Prime Minister now, Mark Carney. What should he do? Given the state of this space, stick with it, throw it into reverse. Joe in Calgary is up next on hour number 2 of Talkback. Joe, thanks for waiting.
Hey,
Joe.
How's it going?
I'm fine. What would you say, Joe?
Well, the thing they don't even think about is last time I checked, you can't run a forge or foundry or create plastic without oil and gas. So it really doesn't matter the EV sector, right? When it comes down to that, how do you produce these things without oil and gas? But let's go electrical.
Right. Okay. So we're still going to need oil and gas. We can have an oil and gas industry. We can have an oil and gas industry. I'm pro oil and gas.
Oh yeah, no.
But
a lot of these people think, here we go. We're going to go EV,
all electric, right? Sure.
Yeah,
sure. But I guess what I'm asking is, should we be doing both? Like we can have an oil and gas industry and an EV industry in Canada. Should we be?
There's practical use for it, except for again, most of the people who go with the EVs and they're playing the righteous. If they actually looked up the lithium mining and what it's like, and then the pollution caused by these batteries when they're sitting there decaying after they're dead.
Yeah, there is an industry now recycling those batteries, as I understand. A lot
of people think they are.
Yeah, there is an industry now that recycles these batteries and tries to, reuse them, I guess.
But again,
lessen the environmental impact of these batteries going into whatever landfills or wherever they go. Right.
Yeah. Right. But that's the thing. EVs aren't the answer, right? I do like the hydrogen, right?
Okay.
The EVs do have their practicality in cities, right? But here in Calgary, one of my friends works for the city. They bought a bunch of EV cars. And when we had a minus 40 snap, when he got into it, when it was parked inside, said 320 kilometers. He drove out the door. Within 20 minutes, it was down to 120 kilometers.
Right.
By the time he drove a half hour, he had to return to the shop because it was too cold for the batteries.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So there is like Vancouver, prime example, great for EVs. The climate is good. Right.
Sure.
There is places for them, but not here we go across the board.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. You've got us off to a good start here in the second hour. Let's go to Sammy up next on Talkback. Hi, Sammy.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my call.
My pleasure.
This is the first time I am calling to your show.
Well, I appreciate that.
I haven't called before, and today I think it's time that a different voice comes on your program, because I am hearing vast majority of your callers, either they are directly or indirectly work for oil companies, or they are shareholders, or their relatives and families are involved.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't probe into the background of people who call the show.
They are totally defending oil sectors to be business as usual for the last 75 years, and they have a lot of problems with going electric with regard to vehicles and the manufacturing of the batteries in this country. I would like to bring to your attention, especially those listeners who are living outside of Alberta, that, believe it or not, the oil sector has been enjoying a huge subsidy both from Alberta government and federal government since 50s. We are talking about the past 75 years. The oil sector could not exist, could not continue with this huge pollution that is happening in northern Alberta without receiving a huge subsidy and tax write-off from both Alberta government and federal government. And regardless who was in charge, whether it's the liberal conservatives in Ottawa or whether it's NDP or UCP here in Edmonton, this is the same business.
I guess the rationale would be it employs people, it creates wealth, it contributes to the economy. What we're questioning here is, will this industry do the same thing?
Well,
and we're open to hearing both sides.
But you know, Rob, another aspect to this oil sector that is not known outside of Alberta, and this is the one I need to bring to your attention, because this is only a mining project. The bitumen, which is produced in northern Alberta around Fort Mac, this is only going to one destination, and that is United States. And because the refinery in United States is the only refineries are equipped to refine product.
Hopefully that will change. We have the Trans Mountain Pipeline now open for business, despite what Mr. Guilbeault says.
Let's talk about the production of this bitumen.
And the Irving refinery in New Brunswick was willing to do upgrades to its refinery in New Brunswick, so that it could process the heavier oil from Alberta.
But Rob, for the people who are outside of Alberta, they have to realize northern Alberta is a toxic wasteland.
Oh, I don't think so, sir.
The mining project that is happening, because this is not you are drilling and the oil comes up from the ground.
Sure.
This is a mining project, meaning for every barrel of bitumen or oil that is produced in Fort McMurray area, they have to use 10 barrels
what does it take to mine? What does it take to mine and refine lithium, sir? What does it take to mine and what does it take to mine and refine lithium? Is that any more environmentally friendly?
About lithium at this point.
Well,
I'm
clearly.
Sure.
Okay. Well, but the focus today is EVs. We can talk about the oil and gas industry some other day. We'll be right back. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio. We've been talking about Canada's EV strategy, building a manufacturing base for EVs in this country. We are not anti-electric vehicle around here. And we certainly want people to get good paying jobs in Canadian factories, make things here. The question is this the right way to go about it? Are we backing a winner or a loser? As a previous caller said, Chris in Halifax said, governments don't really have great track records when it comes to picking winners and losers. And look, to the previous caller's point, subsidies for fossil fuels, there will always be questions about whether any government should be giving any money to any private business or any industry, whether that's the automobile industry or aviation, aerospace, the money that has flowed to Bombardier over the decades, the news media, or the fossil fuel industry. We can have a discussion about all of this. George in Calgary, thanks for waiting. George, you're on the air. Hi, George.
Yes, thank you, Rob, for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate on this.
Sure thing.
I'm listening to some of the listeners here, and there's some really misconceptions on what's happening with the EV market. Now, I'm not going to say this is a good thing for Canada or not, because each country is trying to create their own EVs. But the EV sales actually had, like in 2025, it jumped to about 35% compared to 2024. China and Europe are about 36 and 35. And if you look outside of Europe, now I'm not talking North America, we'll get to North America, you're looking at actually roughly up almost to 50% at the EV uptake, right? The problem for Canada is that, and that's where I think Honda sort of dropped back on this, was 244 vehicles. Where is that going to go? Like just to Canada? Because the States is going to put tariffs on it, and then I'm sort of looking at, well, what does happens to our auto sector, right?
Right.
You were hearing Ford, you're hearing these other sectors or GM, and Stellantis, and I'm sorry, I'm not saying that name right, but anyhow,
Stellantis.
They're planning now. It takes a long time, so this is not going to happen hopefully Trump doesn't make another term, but it's in that first 4 years, I can't see them moving all out of Canada. But if that is the direction that the big three are moving, then we do have an issue. And then what does Canada invest in? And this is what China did, right? They couldn't make it into the gas vehicle market. So they invested hugely 15 years ago into EVs. That's why they're in that so productive in that EV sector. And one of the people said, oh, because they're subsidized. Well, they were subsidized up to 2022. They're now having to basically run on their own. Not to say that there's not towns or provinces that are giving things on that. And just sorry, I don't want to jump on the oil and gas thing that you're talking about, just EVs. But you did mention a number of $52 billion, right, over the
52.5 billion. Yeah.
Yeah, 52. You know that in that 20 to 24, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but with the province and the federal government, that was over $100 billion. So, and the tax breaks and so on.
No, it's 60-40. That 52.5 billion is split 60-40. It's 31 billion at the federal level and the 21 billion from provincial governments, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer report.
Oh, okay, because what I had for 20 to 20, I'm talking about 20 to 24. So I had federal at 75 billion. I had provincial 20 to 25 billion, which combined is 95 to 100 billion.
Okay. I'm just using the Parliamentary Budget Officer because that's
I've got different numbers here, so my apologies.
Okay.
And I could,
but look, our time is tight here, so we're going to have to wrap this up. Are we moving in the right? Are we moving in the right direction here? Should we stick with this strategy, or?
That's so tough. Like I said, with the states, I'd say they should still look at doing something about this. Yes.
Okay, got to be a player in the space. Fair enough, sir. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Glenn, you're up next. Thanks for waiting, Glenn.
That's okay. I usually end up waiting.
That's okay.
Basically,
thank you.
What I want to point out to people is that one of the reasons we are behind in battery technology is because the gas companies suppressed it for over 100 years. If they want to invest in the electric vehicles, they should first invest a lot of money in researching and catch up that 100 years. Then we'd be able to sell the technology as well as the materials for the batteries and make our own and sell them.
Okay, well, I gather that the vision is, take, for example, Stellantis and Volkswagen combined, the government investment into these is in excess of, almost $35 billion. Okay, almost $35 billion. The vision would be we're going to make these batteries in St. Thomas, these Volkswagen batteries, and we're going to put them into the fleets of Volkswagen vehicles up and down our brands. It's not a matter of, we're not going to build Volkswagen electric vehicles, but we're going to build the batteries that go into Volkswagen electric vehicles. The same with Stellantis. It's not as though we're going to, in any great number, build electric vehicles in Canada, but it's the components that will go into the fleets that are being sold by big companies like Stellantis, which has all kinds of brands, of course. You understand?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if we do more research, we could find ways of not having fires all the time and so on.
Okay. Yeah, fair point. Yeah, okay.
But we lost a century of development.
Okay.
Because big gas companies didn't like the competition.
Okay, I haven't really read much about that. The suppression of big oil of battery technology. But,
the most popular vehicles in the late 1800s were electric.
Okay.
Then they started selling gas for pennies,
Sure.
and everybody switched to gas.
Right. So, I mean, you hear this figure, I mean, in excess of $50 billion for 13 EV factories, EV component factories. Do you think that is something that should continue? A strategy like that?
It's waste money right now.
It's a waste of money right now because you say they haven't done their research.
They haven't done the research yet. Everything's going to keep changing.
Everything is going to keep changing. Okay. Thank you, Glenn, for waiting. I appreciate your call today. And more of your calls just ahead, right after our news update here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
When you speak with political leaders who endorse this EV strategy, I mean, they will outline a number of things. I was told quite matter-of-factly some time ago by the Ontario minister in charge of this file, a man by the name of Vic Fedeli, cabinet minister in Doug Ford's government, that if Canada didn't move in this direction and be part of the electric vehicle revolution, there just wouldn't be an auto sector in this country within 5 to 10 years. That this is the way the auto industry is moving. If Canadian governments aren't part of it, then we're going to get left behind. And all of these jobs will move to the United States. And whether it's the federal government in the United States or state governments in the United States with their own incentives, they will gladly put up big money to have these kinds of automobile ventures in their states. That's part of the rationale from the people who are making the commitments. If we don't do it, another country, namely the United States, will gladly throw money at these companies to have these companies open factories there instead. Another case that has been made is that a lot of the government incentives are based on output or based on production. So if these companies don't produce what they promise to produce, if they don't employ as many people as they promise to employ, then they don't qualify for the government largesse. No batteries, no subsidies. And they say that minimizes the downside risk to a certain extent. That case has been made. And also, if you have seen it, the Ontario government does a lot of advertising about this on television, that this isn't just about making batteries, but it's part of a broader industrial strategy. And yes, it includes end components, batteries for electric vehicles, but it's more than that. It's steel made in Canadian steel plants. It's nickel mined in Ontario. It's critical minerals from Northern Ontario, a place called the Ring of Fire, if they ever get around to building a road to the Ring of Fire. But that it's about a broader industrial strategy that includes, auto workers, but also steel workers and miners and prospectors and shippers and all of this. And that's kind of a compelling case, and maybe we shouldn't discount that. That's kind of the upside vision to it all. Miles in Waterloo. Thank you for waiting, Miles. You're on the air.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do we still have that EV mandate in Canada, or is Carney going to nix what Trudeau did? Because I know that Trump is allowing the Americans, he's taking a step backwards from Biden, saying you guys can buy what you want.
Yeah, the sales mandate is still in place in Canada. The EV
so does that mean that
mandate.
I can, if I want a regular 4-cylinder or turbo 3-cylinder that gets 4 liters per 100, and bring it back to Canada, I can buy it in the States in 5 years. If we can't sell them here, can I buy one there and bring it across?
You're asking the wrong guy, sir. I don't know the details on that.
That's something that I might do. I'm just saying, a lot of people can't buy electric. They can't use electric right now. It's the infrastructure isn't there. But the mandate again is what I was asking about. If that's still intact for
it's still in place. It's still intact. Yes, sir. Yes.
That's too bad.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Ken. Miles. Sorry, Miles. Brian in Lethbridge, Alberta. Hello, Brian.
Hello.
Hi, Brian. What do you think here?
Hi. Well, what I'm thinking is that the government is always pushing these mandates onto the little guy, the everyday person with a small job. Get rid of your gas-powered car, get an electric car. Still see the city police, the RCMP, all facets of the government using gas. None of them have switched to electrical, and it seems kind of hypocritical to force us and then just ignore it themselves.
Well, there are plans to do that, to so-called green the Canadian fleet. The government fleet.
And yeah, it doesn't seem like that's a priority. The priority seems to get everybody to spend their last cent on electric vehicle, and the government sits back and watches see what happens. They should be leading the charge and making an example for us. Like, geez, I see the city bus is electric. You know, just encourage the average person to buy by having it an everyday thing.
For example, Canada Post, if it's still viable at all, it has its own plan. It plans to transition its whole entire 14,000 vehicles in the Canada Post fleet. They're gonna. But if you look at they say there'll be half of those will be electric by 2030, and then 100% electric by 2040. The question is Canada Post still around by the end of the year? Right now, the way things are going at Canada Post.
Well, they're mostly running on some contractors who are using their own minivans. And as well,
I mean, Canada Post still has a lot of vehicles, sir. They have 14,000 vehicles in their fleet, right? So
and as well, we watch the posties being transported around town in city cabs, which are all gas vehicles. So, I mean, I think, they should set an example for us. Why should I buy an electric vehicle if Trudeau's driving around in a gas-powered limo? You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, yeah, with 6 SUVs in front and 6 in the rear.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Mr. Trudeau is gone, sir. It's Mr. Carney now. It's Prime Minister Carney now.
I hate to use his name. I have trouble with that.
Okay. All right. Well, get used to it because he's going to be around for a while.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
This may be the last word of the day on the EV strategy in this country. Love the discussion today. Imran up next. Hi, Imran.
Hey, how you doing, Rob?
I'm good, thank you. What's your opinion?
I feel that at this point in time, they should not invest that heavily into these electric cars. I think they should play safe and go with a joint venture type deal with China, who's already present and have tried and tested. Plus, your return on investment will be guaranteed too. So if you invest 50-60 billion and if the project flops, that will going to be very much devastating for the economy. And the investors' confidence will be lost too.
Yeah, very good point. Something that was raised by another caller. We're going to let you go. There's a bit of a delay on your phone. I mean, there's an old line. Modern technology has the shelf life of dairy products, and that should be of some concern. What's hot today? What's modern today? What's advanced today? Maybe it's not so hot tomorrow. Maybe it becomes obsolete tomorrow. And a number of callers have raised this, that there's no guarantee that the battery technology or the components for those batteries that will be built wherever in Alliston, Ontario at a Honda plant or at a Stellantis plant in Windsor, at a Volkswagen plant in St. Thomas, or, well, it doesn't look like there's going to be a Northvolt plant in Montreal. Whatever the case, there's no guarantee that will be the technology that will be powering the vehicles of the future. What if we've backed the BlackBerry, but the future is actually the iPhone? Comes to mind. What if there is some huge technological breakthrough in battery technology that renders whatever, not even battery technology, zero emissions technology? And what if that renders whatever VW is doing or Honda, what if it renders that technology obsolete? What is to become of these factories? You can see the tumbleweeds blowing by. Also, this whole idea of first mover advantage, despite the fact that we've been making vehicles in Canada for more than 120 years, when it comes to the EV space, we don't have the first mover advantage. China does. And a number of callers have raised this today. We'll never be able to compete with China. will never be able to compete with the EV industry that the Chinese government has basically underwritten. And we have heard this expressed today, that when it comes to the EV industry, the Chinese EV industry is just light years ahead of us. Can't compete on the technology, can't compete on the price. Foolhardy to think we can. Politicians that are dreaming in Technicolor. The EV war is over. We lost. China won. And now China's large EV companies like BYD sold 11 million electric vehicles last year alone. The idea is that they beat us to it. And we, by following down this road and continuing with this strategy, would just be throwing good money after bad. And we would be trying to play an impossible game of catch up. One other case that has been made is it's just too much darn money. That it's an obscene amount of taxpayer money, more than $52 billion. Are you kidding me? On a dozen projects or so all across the country that might, maybe someday down the road, maybe employ how many people? Directly 10,000? There's really no firm number out there. How many jobs this grand industrial strategy is even going to create? And that it's money that would be better spent on other things, other priorities. And lots of people would have other priorities, like healthcare. How many nurses could you hire with $52 billion? Or doctors, or personal support workers, or social workers, or mental health experts? Name your priority. Affordable housing, social welfare, help for seniors, help for veterans. It could be an endless list of other stuff that you could spend that money on instead of a dozen or so EV plants. That's why it's important to have your say, because it's your money. And I've loved our discussion today as we talked about whether the government should move ahead with these projects. Something brand new tomorrow for Talkback. Another topic and more of your phone calls. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Rob Snow, here every day with David Smith. The latest breaking news is coming up next. This is News Radio.